There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. She is currently Victoria on the U.S. National Tour 6 of Cats and performing right now. So welcome, Hyla Perillo, and thank you for joining me.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I am excited. You're the first person on this new cast that I've gotten to talk to. So you are currently performing. Like you,
Yes.
we are talking in the morning, and you performed last night and are performing tonight. So
Yes.
you are in the thick of things right now
Yes.
of doing it. So before we talk about your kind of current tour, tell me a little bit about your history with the show. When was the first time you saw it? You know, what was your experience with it?
The first time I saw the show was on the VHS tape from way back when. And I remember watching it a lot as a child, and I remember trying to do the white cat solo, and my leg just couldn't get there, and I was like, wow. But I thought it was so cool. At first I was scared because the eyes, as a child, you're like, oh my gosh, this is kind of scary. But that was my first experience with cats. Just watching it on the VHS and being totally in love with the dancing and all the characters.
So, okay, so that movie comes out in 1998.
Yes.
How old are you when you're seeing that?
I think I was about 8 or 9, and I was
Okay.
born in 99, so.
Okay. So you see, yeah. So you're still like dusting off a VHS VHS player at that time. Like
Yes.
you don't have the VCR open,
No.
and you're playing it. Okay, so you're seeing the video, 8 or 9 years old, as a dancer. Like
Yes.
you have to be to do this role.
Yes.
And so that was kind of your cue. Did you see it on stage before going on tour at all?
Unfortunately, I did not.
No. Wow.
No.
Okay. That's okay. So I'm fascinated because you've seen this, this movie. It's a slightly different production than what you do. Walk me through what you were told and prepped. Like, this tour starts back up. How are you given the backstory of your characters? How do you learn the show? Not just the dancing of the show and the numbers and everything, but how do you learn this is what's going on?
The lovely Chrissy Cartwright, who's been working on this since the beginning of Cats, tells us and briefs us on what all of our characters mean and what the show actually is, because people think that there's not a plot because it's chaotic all of the time, and especially with the revival, there's a lot of new elements involved. So she kind of breaks down what everything means and how everything connects and what Grisabella, why she's there, and why all of these cats have features, and why Victoria is prevalent to the story, and why all of these characters prevalent, and how, like, what a Jellicle cat is. So that's how we were prepped to do the show. But yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you get this like from Chrissy,
Mhm.
you get the whole rundown.
Yes.
What does she tell you as Victoria's backstory? And then more importantly, how much did you piece together of that when you watched the video? Did you catch any of what she told you?
I did and I did not. I just thought Victoria was this beautiful dancer, but she actually breaks down that Victoria is a kitten. I did not know that. I just thought she was a cat. You can't really tell with the makeup and the characters, but she's a kitten. She's romantic, innocent, unself-conscious. And she's actually finding her sexuality. The original Broadway production is very sexual. We've broken it down more into a more production kind of piece with the revival, which keeps to the original. But so Victoria is very finding herself and discovering what it means to be feline and feminine. And her fearlessness kind of connects into why she touches Grizz at the end. But I had no idea. I just thought she was this beautiful white cat, and I think a lot of people don't quite connect the story with who Victoria is. They just see her as a dancer, and they see her touch Grizz and think of her as this like white savior complex in a way. But I've made my own headcons to make that connect better. But when I was watching the video and then Chrissy was telling me my story, I had no idea. I had no idea that's what it was. which I think is why the audience is like, why is this white cat doing all of this stuff? But it makes sense when Chrissy tells a story.
Yeah. So you just said that you have some headcons to like tie things together. Well,
Yes.
can you share those? Like what have you kind of added to this?
Okay, I don't know if anyone has ever had the same headcanon as I, but I believe that Victoria was reborn from the Heaviside Layer. There's a lot of fandom that believes that she represents the Jellicle Moon, which she does. Just to clarify that, she does represent the Jellicle Moon that all of the cats are obviously drawn to. There have been some like rumors that she's Grisabella's love child, but I tried to connect that, but it also didn't make sense because Grisabella is just, in my opinion, kind of older and this brand new white kitten, and I'm just like trying to connect that, and I was like, I think the being reborn from a Heaviside Layer makes more sense, and that's why Old Deuteronomy is so fascinated with her. And then throughout the story, there are times that we're hissing at Gris and just upset that she's there. But for me, when I'm on stage, I'm curious. I'm like, why is she here? Like, I'm not actually hissing at her. I'm just like trying to peek around the corner and be like, who is she? And why does she keep showing up? Because I'm the curious one along with Syllabub. But I'm like, why is she here? And then when I go to touch Grisabella, who's played by the lovely Taylor Harris, love her. We are both women of color. And this is one of the first times that two women of color in prominent roles are together. So my headcanon is that even though there are these rumors of a white savior complex, I am in my own skin as the white cat, and I am another person of color lifting up another person of color to bring her off into a better life, into the Heaviside Layer. So those are some of my little headcons I like to play with my story.
Wow. So that is a couple things I hadn't heard before. I had not heard the reborn from the Heaviside Layer. It is pretty well documented that Grizz being your mom is like one theory. So I was going to ask you about that. So you don't play it that way. You don't think that that's possible.
Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. It depends on like what I'm feeling for the show, just to keep me interested. But it also just for me to connect it, and how some of our castmates also connect our characters to each other. I just personally cannot connect that I am Grizz's love child. For some reason, there's just something in me that's just like, I just can't. I just think the being reborn from the Heaviside Layer makes sense because Old Deuteronomy is just so fascinated on why she turned out so pure white. And that represents the Jellicle Moon. So there's like the Heaviside Layer, the Jellicle Moon, she came out pure white. She represents this. So it kind of connects that for me.
Interesting. I really like it. I just had never thought about it that way. I think I spent more time trying to think about the family tree. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, yeah, it could be mom. You could be Monk, could be dad, like
Yeah.
who else? Like, because that's the other rumor. But I think that's really interesting is that is, so you think you were last year's choice?
Yes.
And then this is your coming back to the tribe as being reborn.
Yeah.
I love it. That's an answer. One of my big questions has always been who was picked last year, who's picked next year.
Yes.
And you've now answered potentially one of those.
I know there's a lot of rumors or theories that Syllabub was because she's the youngest, which makes sense in a way. So there's always that bounce back between all of the castmates and I on like who came out last. Like, was it me? Was it Syllabub? How does this connect? We love to play little headcon games with each other.
Yeah, and so I think I've slowly started to figure out. Explain headcon to someone who's maybe not a theater person.
I actually didn't know what a headcon was until theater this year. A headcon is kind of a story you play within yourself and with other characters to develop your own story. It might not we try and hope that it relates to the audience, but if it makes sense to us, then it will relate to the audience. So it's kind of like a little story you play in your own head to further your acting into your role.
Yeah, and so it's so fascinating to me because when I first got to there's a Cats Wikipedia fan page, and the headcon section is I just kept calling the rumor mill. I'm like, this is the rumor mill. Like this is all this crazy rumor mill stuff, and there's stuff that's in there and stuff that's not in there, and it's exactly that though. It's in a show like this where there's a plot as you mentioned, but it's loose. It's a light plot. there is a lot of room for interpretation of
Hmm.
like things that are going to be unanswered unless you're Chrissy,
Right.
like, or unless you're, like one of the 5 people in the world that can like probably actually answer those
Right.
questions.
Yes.
I love it. So here's my other kind of thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about, because you talked about how sexual the nature of your
Hmm.
role is. Did you recognize any of that as a 10-year-old? And how surprised were you when you kind of got the role and started like hearing kind of, oh,
Hmm.
this is what this is?
I did not. I did not see that as a 10-year-old. Obviously, as a 10-year-old, you're not really, you're not sure of what sexual things are yet. I mean, women go through puberty early on that stage, but we're still learning. So I had no idea. I just thought she was doing this beautiful adagio, like solo. And then when Chrissy told me, she was like, "No, you're having a moment with yourself. You're having a moment with yourself. Like it's beautiful, but the reason why you're like scratching yourself and then you go up into a split is because you're feeling all of the feelings that you've never felt before because you're now entering into this teenage kind of puberty level." And I was like, oh, in the rehearsal process I was like, okay. And then Kim Craven, who worked with Andy Blankenbuehler and who is I think the associate choreographer, I don't really know the professional terms for each role. I just look at them as all of my directors. She was giving me notes on it as well, and she said the same thing, and I was like, what? I was like, I just thought I was lifting my leg and then going into a split and then being like a little cat. But no, it's much more in depth and much more sexual than I thought as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think this whole show
Hmm.
is a lot more sexual and a lot darker
Hmm.
than I realized, even watching it as an adult. I mean, I never saw I didn't even know there was a VHS tape to watch growing up. I was not part of this world until
Hmm.
2000, I don't know, 18, 19, when I started this.
Hmm.
So I didn't know any of this stuff. And so when I saw the show in 2016, none of that, I didn't recognize any of that. I was like, same thing. I'm like, oh, that's some really impressive dance. I can't do that. My leg doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't even think about it. And then all of a sudden you start like watching the show in detail and you start like really looking at it. It's like, oh, she's having her
Hmm.
moment. Oh, it looks like they're basically doing it on stage.
Yep.
Oh, the ball is an orgy. Like,
Yeah, literally.
it's just every single thing starts getting like just slightly weirder and more sexual every
Yes.
time I kind of learn more. So it's so fascinating because it's such a like your role is such a dance, like
Hmm.
it's dancers, it's like
It's
you're
heavy
it's not
dancing.
always the Broadway person. It's usually someone that has a very,
Hmm.
technical dance background. And so it is kind of that unique thing of where you probably haven't been like there's some people that I've talked to that've been in the cast who are like they're theater through and through.
Oh yeah.
They know every part of this, and they're like, oh yeah, of course I recognize some of that. When I
Hmm.
watched it as a teenager or later,
Hmm.
and because I watched the VHS probably burn through them, watch them like thousands of times, and I'm sitting there going like, no, I had no idea that Demeter was abused. Like
Right.
like that's that you should. How am I supposed to pick that up? And when I can't even tell you who Demeter is the first time I saw it.
Yeah, I had no idea any of the characters. I just knew there was a white cat. I knew that there was a Gumby cat, like all of the features that say their names. I was like, cool. And then I had no idea Grisabella was quote unquote McCavity's prostitute either. I had no
Yep.
idea there was that. And I was like, I just thought McCavity was just like a bad guy, like in every story. I didn't know there was actually like a story with him either. So it's just very interesting to see how Cats unfolds.
Yeah, and so I think I want to go back to one of your headcanons, which is you being last year's choice. So that's how you tie together picking almost next year's choice. Like that's why you reach
Hmm.
out to her first.
That yeah, because it's something so familiar to me, somewhere deep seated within my soul, I guess I would say, that like I'm like, why are we being so mean to her? Like why can't we just accept her? Why can't we just there's just something drawing me to her, and I think that's why people think that she is my mother because I'm just so drawn to her and they think it's like a biological draw, which in a way it is, but it's more of like a Heaviside Layer, like Jellicle Moon draw for me. Like
Mm.
I'm more drawing it from like the energy that I'm feeling from what I felt from being reborn and stuff like that. So that's why,
So
yeah.
okay, I want to ask you another question because this is a theory I've not thought about at all, which is great. Um, what this will get to our final question, so I don't want to like get too deep into this, but what do you think was have you thought about your rationale of why you were picked last year then?
I have not thought that deep into it. That's gonna make me think. Because whenever I think of cats, I just think of like the same production over and over and over again. You don't think of like, what was the Jellicle Ball like last year? Grisbella didn't come last year, like things like that. I feel like Victoria, in a way, is a crossover of the sweetness of like a Jelly Lorem and Gus story, but also the fearlessness of a bomb ballerina. So whoever was a
Mm,
mix of that last year, who was reborn or who was sent up to the Heaviside Layer, I feel like is why Victoria came out pure, innocent, and romantic, but so fearless and drawn to choose the next year's choice. If that makes any sense.
it does. Yeah, I mean, completely. So it's
Mhm.
like, it was your time because you were the ready to go,
Mhm.
older Gussish type of story, but also with, a little edge.
Mhm.
So you get picked, and then you come back as this, a kitten version of that
Mhm.
between the two, which is why you're not afraid to go touch Grisabella
Mhm.
first.
Yes.
So fascinating. I think this is why I still am 70 plus episodes into the show, is because every time I talk to somebody new, I'm like, I never considered. I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about next year's choice, but
Mhm.
no time thinking about last year's choice, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. So
That's
now I'm gonna be sitting here thinking all day, being like, all right, who would I've picked last year?
right.
Although maybe you can't really do that. Maybe it's a cat that doesn't end up in the tribe. Like maybe it's a totally different cat.
Yeah. And I mean, we've had to cut several cats too from the show, even throughout the years. So it could have been one of those, like
Yeah,
Griddlebone, something like
yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah.
true. It could be Street Tugger.
Yeah.
The rapping Tugger was picked. He was picked multiple years ago. There's one other rumor that I don't think, like, I'm curious if you've ever kind of thought about it this way, but it's that your character's either mute or deaf.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from. I think it's because you don't sing, like you don't have a line, and then maybe that's in certain productions that there's just no lines, and so
Hmm.
that's part of it.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think, I don't know about deaf, maybe mute. I mean, because she does intently listen to memory. And there are some moments in memory that Victoria kind of turns her head and she's like, "Oh, that sounds familiar." Like, or like,
Hmm.
"What? Oh, what is that?" Because I remember Chrissy giving me some like ideas on like how to react instead of just sitting there and watching Grisabella do memory
Yeah.
every night. Um, so like there are moments like when she like mentions happiness, like I'm like, oh, I know what that is because I'm a kitten, or like memory, and I'm like, for some reason that like is familiar to me or is foreign to me depending on the night. Maybe mute. I do say a few lines with like a group, and I know in the 1998 production she did have some lines. So I don't know. That's a very interesting theory on Victoria.
Yeah, it's in the headcanon rumor mill
Hmm.
page. But it's also like if you watch the new movie, she's the whole like piece of
Yeah.
the story. Like she's essentially the eyes you see it through. So it's not the best rumor, but it is one that's popped up a couple times. And so I didn't know. Mute makes more sense than deaf. I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
And I think it seems almost like an easy out because of the dancing number. It's like it's dancing heavy.
It's so hard. I am not going to lie. The dancing is hard. I can't like I try to sing through everything, but I'm like, Andy Blankenbuehler's really making the white cat like run marathons here. Same with
Yeah.
Tantamile. I mean Tantamile sings, but I'm like, huh, huh. I can't imagine if Victoria had like a syllabub singing track, which I know that syllabub and Victoria are actually a cut track. So they're like a
Wow.
split track. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what was that experience? I mean, we've talked now through all the craziness of the plot, but talk like what is the like how it seems as someone who knows nothing about dance, it seems extremely difficult and extremely technical and like very
Hmm.
challenging. Like, what is that rehearsal and practice and like was it harder than you expected? Was it like you just said it's daunting, like
Hmm.
challenging, but what is the doing this each night like?
It's like running a marathon, I will not lie. They say that the Jellicle ball gets easier. They lie. It does not get easier at any time. And since like with the revival things have changed, they added more like a little bit more featured roles for Victoria, just so she's not like sitting around and like getting cold, just so she can keep her body warm. There are moments on stage that you kind of have to be like, okay, I'm gonna breathe here. I'm gonna take it easy here. I don't need to go balls to the walls. Um, just so I can prepare for the Jellicle Ball. But it's It's actually quite fun. I love a challenge. I love because I'm a runner outside of dance. I love to run. I love the constant cardio. I love long running. Um, so it's a lot. It's a lot every night. But hey, it keeps me in shape.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you are, I mean, are you doing 8 shows a week still? I mean,
Yes.
basically, yeah. And it's the one thing that I also didn't know until this podcast was about a rake stage. Are you
Oh,
doing rake stage in certain
no, no,
times or
no.
no?
No,
Okay.
not for us. I mean, we're in a different venue every
Yeah.
week, so sometimes our stage is smaller, which is difficult, and sometimes it's sometimes the flooring's a little creaky because of the flooring that we're on, depending on like where we are. So it's a little difficult, even without a rake. I mean, I can't imagine dancing on a rake. I've heard so many things about a rake. Claire told me last night that like doing the Victoria solo on a rake stage is the worst. I can't imagine.
I didn't know. I mean, like when I learned what that was, it kind of blew my mind because seems so difficult flat, let
Yes.
alone doing it on an angle.
Mm-mm.
And then there's so many injuries it seems that comes from this.
There are quite a few injuries that come from just going hard every night, especially with cats. You're crawling and then you're sitting and then you're dancing really hard and then you're sitting more and then you're crawling. But thank goodness for my athletic trainer and thank goodness for Pilates because without it, I'd think my body would literally fall apart. I'm very, very, very self-conscious on my like longevity of my career, so I like try throughout the day to like make sure I'm doing something to keep my body going so I'm not just doing a show every night just so like my body's like okay you're moving you're doing a show you sleep you're moving you're doing a show and sleep and then you're doing rehab so that helps me get through the 8 shows sometimes 10, 11 shows a week
Wow.
on a split
Wow.
week.
Insane. Absolutely insane. There's one other piece I wanted to quickly go back to
Hmm.
that are you involved in Green Eyes and what is your take on Green Eyes?
What is green eyes? I don't know.
The beginning of the show where everyone goes out and scares the living daylights out of children.
We don't crawl into the audience or
You don't
anything.
get to do that
Mm,
on
because
tour?
of
Oh no.
COVID. I know, we are so sad we don't get to go into the audience. That like throughout the rehearsal process, they did brief us on like what each character would do or what they did before the pandemic. But we haven't been able to do that because every single time we think we're getting over a COVID surge, a new outbreak happens.
That
So,
makes a ton of sense. I didn't
yeah,
even think about
it's
that. I just know
it's
that that's like
yeah.
a traumatizing piece of the show.
Yeah, it's so crazy because I know that Old Deuteronomy used to come from like the audience, and now and like I used to greet him, but now I'm just sitting in the wing waiting for him to walk on stage, and I'm like looking at the wing like an idiot. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
it's I'm kind of sad we don't get to come through the audience. I think I don't know if I'd feel that comfortable being that close to people's faces though.
Yeah, I mean, the minute you said it, I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. That's probably a really good idea because, like, you don't want to have like you're not going to be masked. Hopefully, everyone else is, but you're not
Yeah.
going to you're going to be close to people. Like, that's an
Hmm.
unnecessary risk to take. But
Yeah.
it is a traumatizing part of the show is that it starts with eyes flashing in front of everyone's face
Oh dear.
and
I would be
scares
traumatized.
people like none other. And so I'm always kind of curious if that's a like people have been punched, people have like literally had people scared. Like I didn't even think about that. And old Deuteronomy used to sit during intermission on stage. Is he
Mhm.
still doing that?
He doesn't sit the entire time. I know I was talking to Claire last night, and I think Q, who played Old Deuteronomy
Hmm.
on Broadway, he sat there the entire time, and I don't think that was he wanted to. He wanted to sit there. He didn't have to, but he wanted to. He wanted to meditate. He wanted to sit there the entire time. Um, but in Delacio, he doesn't go out till like 5 minutes to places, and he just like walks on, and then he sits down. He's not on
Interesting.
there the entire time.
Yeah, because Q sat there. That threw me off because I thought like the lights come on and I was like, why is he still like? It took me a second to be like, is he actually still there? Is that a prop?
Yeah.
And he sat there the whole time.
Hmm.
And then the second time I saw it, people went up and took pictures with him.
Yes.
And then he starts the second act.
Hmm.
And so I was like, how does he sit there for 15, 20 minutes, no water, no nothing, and then immediately start singing?
I don't know how Q
Is
did it. I think what Claire told me is that he just loved to meditate. He loved to be in his own zone and in his own head during that time, and just like be in character while people are coming up to him and stuff like that, and just still like be like kind of Old Deuteronomy and meditation. So
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that makes me.
I can't imagine just sitting up there for 20 minutes. I need my break. I need my I need
Yeah.
my snack. I need my water.
Yeah, as I say, it's such a physical and demanding show that it's like you don't get a lot of times. I mean, I guess unless you're Grizz, because Grizz is a 15-minute, like extremely emotional,
Mhm.
like 15 minutes on stage.
Yeah.
But almost everyone else is on and
Yes.
running and dancing and moving for 2 hours and 45 minutes or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
it's a long time.
And I didn't even know that Old Deuteronomy, I didn't know in the revival they had him dance with us, which is kind of funny. It's really cute to see this big fluffy guy just like doing all the movement with us. But I had no idea until the rehearsal process, and I'm just like, dang, I could not do that in that big heavy like 30-pound like suit. I'm
Mhm.
already sweating in my like very, very thin unitard. I could not do that.
Yeah. Wow. I hope you're having a jellicle ball. We'll be right back after this quick break. Okay, I want to go into the rapid fire, and then I want to debate the Grisabella debate with you.
Okay.
If you were not Victoria, who would you want to play? Like, if you could do one track, any male, female, forget if you're
Mhm.
capable of doing it, if it's in a vocal range or whatever. Just if you could just say, I have all that ability for one night, who would you want to do?
Oh, I have two. Bomb Ballerina and Play-Doh.
Okay.
I think Bomb Ballerina is badass. I will always think, and she's my roommate. I think she's badass. And then Play-Doh, obviously switching roles of my opposite. And I know Aiden Pressel, he and I have been friends forever, and partners forever. And I think it'd just be cool to just lift Vic all night. I think it'd
Yeah.
be
So
super cool.
okay, so Play-Doh is the one that you do your dance with, because it's
Yes.
changed over the years. It's not always Play-Doh.
Oh, really? I mean, there is an Admetus on the other tours, I guess, but I think Plato and Admetus are the same character to me.
Yeah, Alonzo's occasionally the other one.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that.
it just and there's 40 years, so it could
Yeah,
have just been that there was not a a Play-Doh, or there might have not have been this, or they just
right.
renamed them. So it could just this again. Goes back to the headcanon rumor mill page where
Oh,
there's
yeah.
just a ton.
Yeah, they switch
Okay,
around. Yeah.
that would be fun. So not Demeter though, but a badass bomb,
Yeah.
and then
And
your counterpart.
yeah, I don't think I mean, Demeter would be great, but I think she's a little too crazy for my personality.
A little skittish, a little
Yeah.
challenging. Again, goes through a lot
Yeah.
of trauma that I
Hmm.
didn't realize until I started learning about the show.
Yeah, she does. She goes through hell with McCavity.
Hmm. Who are your favorite and least favorite cats? Not
Oh.
actors, characters.
My favorites are Misto and Skimble and Jelly Lorm and Gus. Those would be my top four. My least favorite? That's hard. Ooh. Sometimes I say it's Rum Tum Tugger because I'm just like, ugh, this guy again every night. Like he's such a ham. Um, when my family saw it and when my husband saw it, he's like, man, Rum Tum Tugger is kind of a ham. He's funny, but he's like all over the place. I think he's just like that annoying like older brother that you're just like come on, dude. Like it's like the Hannah Montana and Jackson. Like I'm like, come on. Like can you just we're trying to get the story along. Stop interrupting. Like, but I think he's great. But I think out of all of them, I think Rum Tum Tugger, I'm just like, okay, can we get to the Jellicle Ball now?
Yeah,
Can you
you've had
stop
enough.
making it about you? Like things like that.
Yeah. Um, which is your favorite song from the show?
Skimbleshanks, hands down, always.
Every time. It's
Every
such
time.
a do you build the train on
Yes.
tour right now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm still scarred because the light hit me when you
Oh.
pointed into the crowd, and I was not ready for that. And so I'm like, it's the song has grown on me, but when I saw it the first time, I'm like, I don't like this guy. I don't know who it is, and I don't even know who pointed it at me because it's not Skimbleshanks.
It's Misto.
It's
Sorry.
Misto. Oh, I got to find out who did Misto in 2016, and I got some words for him. Which here's my kind of last rapid fire, and then we can debate the 3 years worth. Now I think we're going to talk about all three because you've
Okay.
answered one of them. But which other like, I always like to think about which other character could like be the Victoria kind of track. So like which one,
Mhm.
like which who else could have their kind of coming of age moment in your Jellicle tribe if it's not Victoria?
If it was female identifying, probably Syllabub or Tantamile. Tantamile and I do a lot of the same movements, but since Tantamile is a twin and she's psychic, it wouldn't quite read, I
Hmm.
think. But I think for Syllabub, it might, but it also might be that like she's younger maybe than me, so I think people would be like, "Ugh, I think this is way too inappropriate for audiences."
Yeah.
Male identifying, I feel like it could be Tumble, maybe? Because I feel
Mm,
like Tumble and Victoria relate in the way of how all of their tricks and stuff. So maybe his like being like over flamboyant and like wanting to like flip all the time and be like, "Hey, old Deuteronomy, look at me!" Like it's kind of like a
yeah.
coming of age kind of thing, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Now let's get to the final question. I've argued at length that I don't think Grisabella is the correct Jellicle choice this year.
Hmm.
So, what I want to hear from you, and we can discuss these, and I have some follow up questions, I'm sure.
Okay.
You've established that you think you were last year's.
Hmm.
I would love to hear if you think Grisabella should still be this year or somebody else. And then I'd also love to hear who you think should be next year, depending on who you pick.
Ooh, okay. Story-wise, I guess it makes sense that Grisabella is this year's choice, because after Memory, she's literally walking away to go shrivel up and die. And it's just sad that she, like, if that was the case and she wasn't chosen, that she would just shrivel up and die and not be chosen. But I am always a Skimbleshanks stan. I think he's overworked. I think it's time for him to go be reborn. I think, he builds a train. He takes care of everyone on the train. He's kind of like the dad figure to everyone, dad, grandpa figure. I don't know the correct age of Skimbleshanks, but I feel like he's just like, I need a break from these Jellicles. Like I need to be reborn now. And next year's choice. Oh, it's
Well, hold on. Before we go to next year, I kind of I want to I want to dig deeper.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm a fan anytime somebody says not Grisabella. So I'm for Skimbleshanks. I always had Skimbleshanks as the uncle.
Yeah.
Um, the kind of like crazy, a little manicky uncle.
Hmm.
The song's very fast. I think it's someone was telling me it's in a different, like it's in a the tune is quicker than most like songs normally are. It's like
Yes.
not a
Hmm.
common type. And so I I like Skimble being choice. I think he is on the older end, so he
Hmm.
kind of makes some sense. If you're Old Deuteronomy,
Hmm.
what is your criteria for picking each year? Like, how does Skimble get that
Ooh.
choice?
I think Skimble gets the choice from Old Deuteronomy watching his experiences and seeing how his life has planned out. I feel like Skimbleshanks, there is like a little bit of a Skimbleshanks and Jenny Any Dots kind of thing, but I think Skimbleshanks is kind of that like single father figure kind of guy, and he's just like kind of lonely on the railway. So I think Old Deuteronomy has a lot of sympathy for him, even though he has this like big, like fun number. I think that compensates for some kind of loneliness. Because when you see
Hmm,
Skimbleshanks, yes, he's with Jenny a lot, but I think that they're more like a brother-sister kind of like duo than aunt and uncle. That's just
okay.
my own little thing.
Yeah.
So I think Old Deuteronomy's like, you know what, he has been overworked. He's a little lonely. Let's have him be the next one.
I like it. So your kind of Old Deuteronomy criteria is merit. Like
Yes.
this guy's deserve. He's
Hmm.
put the time and effort into the
Hmm.
tribe.
Yeah.
He deserves it, and
Yes.
that would be very anti Grisabella choice because she's left. So
Yes.
she's not put her time in and overworked. Well, she could be, but not for the tribe.
Right. I know that her story is a story of redemption, but I feel like every kind of story in this sense is about redemption. And I'm like, what about the people that actually like work hard and like deserve things? And I know that there's like this whole stigma of like people who work hard and deserve better but don't necessarily get recognized for it are like the kind of people that are humble about it. But I'm like, yeah, sure, but like they deserve this. Like this other person, sure, they went through a whole bunch of bad crap, but like, come on. Like we need to stop giving sympathy for people who make bad decisions on their own, you know?
I'm with you. I mean, I've been arguing against her for almost 3 years now. I do think the other thing though with her argument is that if the whole point is that you, especially like your character, starts her being reaccepted to the tribe, why immediately send her away? Like, why not let her live back with the tribe for a year? Like,
Right.
come back. Like, so that is kind of would be my answer for next year's
I
choice.
think I mean some of us joke about that we just like are just so tired of her just coming back, so just let's just get rid of her. Let's just get
Yeah.
get her gone. Like let's just be like, okay, she keeps interrupting our Jellicle ball and everything like that and our fun, so let's just like send her on her way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think like this is a hard question, especially with you doing it every night,
Mhm.
is to like think about why she shouldn't be it when then you have to, in however many hours from now, go and sell yourself as that she should be the choice
Right.
here at the end. So
Yeah.
I kind of get that. I kind of I like Skimble. I think Gus Skimble. There's like more of the older cats generally are the
Mhm.
ones that get the most kind of time and
Yeah.
choice of this.
I think we need another year of Gus. That's why I've always been like, I don't know if I can choose Gus for, you know, this year because he's just like his whole rompus cat and things like that. We need like he's the kind of grandpa figure that you like look forward to seeing at holidays. Like
Mm,
he's like the fun grandpa that like is so he's grumpy but he's so excited to see and like tell people about his past life. That's what the Rumpus Cat is he was the Rumpus Cat and like things like that. So I think we need another year of Gus
okay,
before.
so now that opens up this next question, which is you go last year,
Mm-hmm.
Skimble goes this year. Who's going next year, Gus or Grisabella? Let's assume Grisabella stays back with the tribe and redemption
Mm-hmm.
becomes motherly, or comes back and is a good
Mm-hmm.
member of the tribe. Who are you picking between the two of them, or somebody else next year?
I think Old Deuteronomy needs to go. He's
See,
going on his 100th year. And Monkey Strap, what Chrissy told us is that Monkey Strap is his right hand man because he's training him to become the leader, which is
hmm
why it makes sense that I touch Grizz and then he learns from me and learns from Old Deuteronomy, and then like that circulates, and then Old Deuteronomy is like, okay, I'm content, I can leave now, you know, kind of thing. That's what the whole story for us was told. So I think Old Deuteronomy, he's done his 100 years of work. He's done it. And I think Monkey Strap is more than well prepared to be the next leader. But if it would be between Grizz and Skimble
Oh no, wait,
or
hold on. I'm happy that you picked somebody else. So how would that work? Does he just kill himself? Does he like assign Monkish Trap?
I don't know how he has lived 99 like lives or have gone through 99 wives. That whole sometimes I just don't even know the lyrics. I'm like, he's old. He's the oldest one out of the entire tribe. So maybe he's the kind of he just sends himself off, and I don't know what the Heaviside Layer is, but like he just lays down and he's
Yeah.
reborn. I don't know.
Then he comes back. Then he comes back. Yeah. Okay. So you're going Victoria, Skimbleshanks, Old Deuteronomy.
hmm
Let's keep going. We got another year. Now Monkish Trap's picking.
Oh, Monkey Strap. I think Monkey Strap would probably pick Gus. I think Monkey Strap, I mean, because they have their whole Rumpus Cat duet. And I think in a way, Monkey Strap and Gus have a very close relationship, unlike him and Old Deuteronomy. So I think he would choose Gus. He's like, you know what, it's your time. I love you. You've been a super great grandpa figure to me, but I think it's time for you to like go.
So you've got is then Grizz. So you've got Grizz 4 years from now. I love this. Like, let's keep bumping her out. We could
I
pick
think
somebody else ahead of her.
I think she needs to prove herself. I think like not everyone should always have to prove themselves, but after all of like I mean, granted some of her mistakes weren't necessarily her fault. She was under McCavity's powers or whatever, but I think she needs time to be with everyone and for people to like actually like hear her and things like that. So I think then after Gus it would be Grizz. I think and then maybe Jenny. I think Jenny's got her whole tap number. She's energetic. She's got
Yeah,
like 20 more years on her. She can keep going. But
totally. Yeah, she seems like she also has a pretty big role in
yes.
like keeping all the kittens in line and everything. That like I think she's gonna, maybe in a couple years from now, someone can start like, maybe you're Victoria is starting to take over, or some of
Mhm.
the other like Bomb and Demeter are starting to take over. Like I think
Mhm.
her owning, like being the mother, is necessary for a
Yes.
while, which is I think why it's hard to argue for her.
Yes, like I understand that they need like a few female figures, but I think Jenny with her big tap number and like her energetic self, like she's got so many years left. Let's not
Mhm.
send her away yet.
Yeah. Now I am pretty confident that neither of us, I know I haven't, have probably ever thought about this. Who do you think went the year before Victoria went?
Oh, oh,
'Cause it'll be somebody in the tribe, right? It'll be somebody
yeah.
that's back.
Maybe whoever Plato was,
Hmm.
which is why they have
That's
such a close connection.
that was kind of what I was thinking. Is and I
Hmm.
it just, as we're talking through this, is that it's your counterpart,
Yes.
and that's why
Yeah.
he's kind of guiding you through the finding yourself
Hmm.
a year later.
That or maybe McCavity. But McCavity is older, so I don't know how that would pan out age-wise, but it
Yeah,
could
all the
be,
crime
yeah,
just aged him.
it could be McCavity because it would be such polar opposite of what Victoria is. Like complete 360, like 180. It'd
Mhm.
be completely different. So maybe McCavity.
Yeah,
One or the other.
I love it. This has brought a lot of things I hadn't thought about, which I didn't think was possible at this show anymore. With how much I've thought and discussed it, but I loved thinking about previous years and multiple years down the road, and all these different kind of these concepts to this show, and the different headcanons that that you go through and that you think through. Usually I try to convince somebody that's doing it to like play something differently, but I think you've got all these kind of like fun ways you're going
Hmm.
about it, so super exciting.
Yeah, it was super exciting for me to like think about what came before,
Yeah,
this Jellicle choice here. So, yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. How can people like stay in touch with you on social media?
My Instagram handle is Hyla Mayrose, which is at HYLAMAYROSE. I also have Facebook, but that's for close friends and
Yeah,
family only. Sorry. And then I have a Twitter, but I'm just never on it. But that's just at Hyla dash M.
no
So
TikTok yet.
I have a TikTok. It's just I just don't post anything like great. I just like to be in Chris Salvaggio's TikToks.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for hopping on, doing this while you're on tour
Of
and on
course.
the road, and sharing some incredible, new thoughts, for all the listeners to be able to now start thinking and sending messages on, like, if you're listening to this, tell me who you think the last couple years are and the next couple years are, because I think that is
Hmm.
a very interesting debate.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.